Alright, posting this on YouTube, on the economics channel. In protest, I really hate having to do this, but, I can't get engaged in a conversation from outside of YouTube, apparently. Because that sissy old French guy won't sit there and respond to my fucking commentary. And I think it's really relevant, and so this really pisses me off. So I've made 3 beta videos. And they're not very good. They're sloppy. But the gist is that none of this financial collapse is going to have anything to do with the bankers or the Fed or even the national debt. Not in principle, because what it has to do with is what underlies all of this debt and the creation of money. I mean, money isn't created by debt. Money is created by ownership. An owner puts something in the bank, and that creates and generates money. That's how money is created. It's created by ownership, not debt. Banks aren't allowed to just make the money up. All right? They have to have an asset before they can give the money out. And then even people worry about fractional reserve banking. Well, fractional reserve banking is not making money either. It isn't just poofing it out of nowhere. All it's saying is that you can't lend more money than you actually have in assets, which is a minor restriction. I mean, the real fraud would be is if a bank had the power to print the money in their own building, and they just loaned money even without collateralizing it, even without having no asset in the bank to collateralize that lending. So they just gave out money, loaned it to as many people as possible, and just created a way of making money without having to have the original asset. And that might even work. But we don't allow banks to do that because obviously if everything goes wrong, then there's not even an asset in the bank to cover the expense. All right, so this whole economic collapse thing was revealed. It was only revealed by the crisis in the mortgages and housing. That was the bubble that burst first and the loudest, and that revealed the problem. And the problem it revealed is that the wealthy have gotten too wealthy. They own everything. That 11 trillion, 12 trillion, 13 trillion dollars in actually book debt that the national government has, that's owned by somebody. It's not fake money. Again, it's somebody owns us. We have to pay back IOUs to somebody, $11 trillion worth. Well, obviously we're not going to be paying the money back to ourselves. We're paying it back to some elite few, tiny percentage of human beings that own that debt. That's where the root of the problem is that a tiny percentage of the population now owns everything. Even when we have a title to something, we don't own it because they have the power to tax us out of that ownership because we owe them a preposterous amount of money. We owe them more than the value of all the assets we think we own. And that's the root of this problem. It was the migration of ownership from the masses to the very, very tiny fraction of the human population who now has actual title to all the stuff on this planet. You own nothing. They own everything. And they were collecting interest on everything. They will not let their property into the economy unless they get a profit off of it. They will not buy high and sell low if they can avoid it. So you are always going to be obligated to pay them interest on every transaction that takes place. Every business that will be created will only be created if it extorts out of that business, out of that commerce, a profit for them to glean. They will not invest in it if it does not create their profit. So that is essentially a tax on all commerce, on all consumption. And then workers have essentially been priced right out of the market. They have been priced out of ownership. What it took to buy a house 50 years ago in terms of a percentage of your income has tripled or quadrupled or whatever, then sextupled. And that's the impracticality of this. As the rich got richer, they inflated the price of everything because they have to glean a profit off everything. All right, and it wouldn't have mattered, though. If we didn't borrow the money, they would have bought the assets outright, and that would have inflated their price. They just used us as an instrument of buying, so they weren't they were holding no bag. They would be holding a guaranteed asset plus gleaning the interest. So they had no way of losing. It guaranteed their bets. That's all it did. It was a way of guaranteeing their bets, because you would be the one on holding the bag, okay, holding the useless property or the deflated value in the end. And so that's all this racket is about. The same exact disaster, the same bubble would have been created, because as their wealth keeps growing, it causes inflation in the price of commodities. It makes their value relative to your work, your capacity of work to generate enough income to do consuming. It prices you out of the consuming market. And then the only way you can consume, the only way you can buy a house, is to get into a contract that's essentially preposterous. The only way to do it is to rent it from them. And then once they exhausted that, then everything falls off the cliff. When they can't rent it anymore, then you hit the feudal monarchy, where the people are no longer productive, where there's no system of commerce, no system of equity, no incentive to work, no anything, because they hold all the ownership and have no incentive to release any bit of it to the citizens, to make any part of it usable. It turns into their parkland, and you can just look at it and view it, but you can't touch it, you can't eat it, you can't live on it, you can't make it productive, because they own it. And it's happened all across this country. The rich have acquired the ownership of the property has become useless, it's not productive, because nobody can do anything with it, because it's an investment property. Even commodities like oil, the production might have, look, there is peak oil, but part of the production problem might be related to the fact that the oil has value in not pumping it. You can take the value of that asset. If you own an oil field, you can close it down, you can put the value of that asset in the bank, be given a big pile of money, and then lend that money to other purposes to make more money. And so you retain the value of your asset. It gets more valuable over time. You don't pump an ounce of it, and you win, because you're still making money off the asset, even without even pumping any oil out of the asset. And that's how these commodities have bubbled. This is how you inflate the price and the value of things, is that you just keep you've turned them into commodities for trade, not commodities for use. So anyway, I'll post this to you, Joe, and hopefully you'll be willing to engage in some sort of argument about this crap that that little fairy over there in France won't touch. So anyway, we'll see how it goes. It's pissing me off. Everybody's just avoiding the truth, the reality. So I'll post a link to 3 videos. I don't know. It doesn't matter which order. One of them is obviously the first one's the simplest, but they all have different points they're making, getting to the same target. And I'd appreciate if you put in the time to at least, I'll order them in terms of which one I think you really need to see, I guess. But all 3 of them have value. And I'd appreciate if you take the time to watch them. So thanks, anyway. Until next time.